All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Sebastian. I am a developer on the game Oxide MMORPG, or as we are working on right now, Oxide Arena. I'm also taking care of the community aspect of side, so I handle a bit of the marketing, a bunch of the community stuff, and I'd like to say that I oversee the project, or partly at least, probably not as much as people that are specified in their fields, but that's what I do. And today, joining me is Isaac, and we're gonna be recording our first interview-styled discussion, I guess, and we'll be focusing a lot on the backend and infrastructure side of the project. Hi, Isaac.
Hello.
Great. So I have prepared a list of questions for you, which you have no idea over. So you know the general topic, I suppose, but not
Yep.
the questions. So I guess we'll just get right into it. So the first
Yep.
topic that I want to bring and talk about is how our systems interact together. Because, well, one of the focuses of Oxide was to create, I guess Oxide is sort of the founding project, which will allow us to work with different systems that interact between each other later on through different projects and things like that. And I guess one of the first points that I wanted to go over was how our systems interact together and how we plan this out. So I guess my first question for you is how do we do this, and can you break down the different systems in the architecture that we have, and how they interact on a daily basis? Well, currently maybe not as much as they would on release, but how would that happen generally speaking?
Yep, of course. The main systems, you of course need some sort of a game server, which is the things that interact with with your client on your computer. It can be a web browser or it can be a desktop application. For Oxide Arena, we will have a web browser-based game, and for the full release of Oxide, we will have a desktop application. And essentially, you have a game server that in the web page version, we are using WebSockets to communicate, to send data between the client and the server, and basically, whenever you press a command on the client, that command gets sent to the server through WebSockets, and then depending on a lot of normal game stuff, you will move or you will shoot, and then the server will send back data, which the client will then render. So that's kind of a normal setup. What we need, of course, with this is we need some sort of database to actually store a lot of this data that the player needs. If you, for example, buy something in a shop, you gain some experience. You need to preserve this state because otherwise you will just lose it at the end of the session. And this is, of course, not something we want. So we need something sort of database. In this case, we are using a MongoDB for this, which is a document database where we can essentially store a lot of data for the player in a single place, which allows us to very easily and very quickly get all of the relevant data for a specific player.
Awesome.
Yeah, and
Okay,
then
that's very cool.
between, yeah,
No, you're good. Sorry,
uh,
go ahead.
and then between, of course, you also need some sort of there are several ways that you can actually get the data from the database. Either you can do it directly from the server through like native code within that server, or you could do it through some sort of API where you kind of have an intermediate service that you can fetch from your backend server and send through APIs. We are doing the native approach where we actually are using the native parts, kind of to reduce the amount of infrastructure that is needed, because otherwise we will need some more infrastructure for the actual requests.
Got it. So,
Um,
so this would mean that the game operates on a server authoritative system. So everything is handled server side to minimize, well, I guess, cheating and obviously, I guess performance.
yeah, correctly. So we keep everything, all of the logic is done on the server, and this also makes it a bit when you have disconnects, for example, and if it were to be a client based, then you would get really weird movements and things when reconnects happens, and it's in these sort of games it can be quite annoying to deal with that if you encounter that as a player. So that's why we have decided to do it
Yeah, that makes sense.
on the server authoritative part.
Right, and that makes sense since Oxide is such a fast-paced game where actions matter in the split second, and obviously if things are not synced up or things are not will appear. Well, yeah, I guess synced up between client and server, it's I mean it makes the gameplay really complicated. Because I know that one of the main points of Oxide was we really wanted to focus on performance, because it's fun to. Well, firstly because when I spoke to William about this, he was mentioning that what's important with making a really good system right off the bat is it's reusable and we can reuse it for other projects if we were to make spin-offs of Oxide later or things like that. So I guess that's why we're focusing very heavily on infrastructure and well server side optimizations. Yeah, that's really
Yeah.
cool. So I mean, yeah, I've been really impressed. It's been like I think throughout the years I've seen a lot of games who focus more on the arts style. Well, I mean, spending more time on making the game look good and less time on the infrastructure, which means that there are clear what do you call it? Downgrades in terms of performance, which in these kind of competitive games can be really, really frustrating for the player. Right. So cool. Thanks for that. Then let's move on, I guess, to the second topic, which was, well, you kind of talked about it really quickly, which was the MongoDB, the database where we handle, well, both the player counts, I suppose purchases as well, and but also, well, most importantly, one of the cool features that we have, which is the XP system that we link from the game and from and into the Discord, which are synced directly into our database. So I guess which brings me to my first question, which is why did we choose MongoDB? What benefits does that have, like in terms of is it performance? Is it because it's easier to integrate? How would that work?
So first kind of when we had a look at the databases, there's mainly two choices. You can do a relational database, like a traditional SQL Server or something like that, or you could do some sort of NoSQL. And based on kind of experience and based on kind of the requirements and how we actually fetch data and all of that, the relational database seemed to be a bit more complex than it actually needed, because most of the time when you get data for a player, you want basically all of the data. You want like what kind of what levels do they have on these characters, which brings what kind of stats they have, and all of those sort of things. So you oftentimes you want a lot of data, which is very closely correlated to a specific player. And that's kind of why we chose MongoDB, because that is a document database where you basically can just store database or data in a single file, and then you can essentially just index a few fields, which makes fetching this data very quickly. And we know, like, when we know what fields that we have indexed, we can fetch this data extremely quickly, no matter how much data we have. If we have millions or hundreds of millions of accounts, this doesn't really affect performance, since it's super quick to fetch just one document. So that's the main reason that we chose MongoDB.
No, that's really cool. Okay, well then I guess it lines up with our goal of performance and fast response time, really. So okay, very cool. And in terms of like what you're talking about, millions of hundreds of millions, like, is there a specific way we would structure data to support this like scalability, once and flexibility once we do reach, if well not if when we reach these big numbers?
The main issue with these kind of when you get to that sort of data is and when we get to that point is the performance of the database in itself, because if you were to do millions of queries per second to these databases, they would of course be quite overloaded. You would need you can't have a single database running between in the US. You can't have one running in Europe, like or if you're running in Europe or in the US, you get a lot of latency. If you try to connect to the wrong one, you will have a lot of performance and all of those issues. So the way that we kind of with the performance of that part is that we can need to basically we need to use different consistency levels and use different databases. So basically we will have the data will be synced between like several different databases, but it will not be 100% live on each of them all the time. And that's how
Right.
we can enable this scaling to a lot of to these like millions of players, because you can connect your, because if you're playing in the US, you will always play against US players, because otherwise you will have too much ping for this.
Makes
It will
sense.
be too much latency. And so then you don't need to have the data as updated frequently towards the European server, let's say.
Makes sense.
So that's how we can achieve this sort of scaling.
Right. And you were talking about regional. Well, let's take the United States for example. Um,
Yeah.
some games choose to make north and the East Coast, West Coast, and even do South. Do we think that's something we'll probably end up needing? I mean, I suppose it does scale with amount of players, right? But I mean, from a starting point, is it really that interesting to do an East Coast, West Coast split for those things as well?
Not likely. We will probably do like some sort of European based and some North American based, and then depending on when we get certain amount of players, we can uh, put it more regionally even further.
Right.
But from the start, we will start with just making it easy for ourselves and put it just in just a single region or two regions.
Makes sense. Cool. Awesome. And then I guess which sort of kind of leads us into the next point. I mean, ish, right? And that is the one of the cooler features that I mentioned in a previous little reel on Instagram that I posted. I think it was on yesterday, actually. No, the day before. It was Monday, and it was the XP and the leveling. For bots, in terms of that, what kind of logic are we talking? I mean, what kind of logic is it behind storing the bot progressions in the same database? As user accounts, like do we even store it in the same place? I mean, I guess you kind of answered that earlier when you said we store everything in the same page, right? Or as you would call it. How I guess my question is what is the logic behind storing the bot progression in the same place as the user accounts, and how do they interact directly there? How does that function?
Yeah, so we store the data in the same place. It's very simplistic. It doesn't really have any performance issues doing it that way. So uh, that's made it very easy to develop it. And the integration then towards Discord is basically whenever you level up in the game, or you do some sort of progression, you get on the leaderboard or something like that, that will also be reflected in Discord, because there's an integration we have built between our database and Discord.
Yep.
And yeah, but
Yeah. So
right
like,
now it's
no, go ahead.
yeah, go ahead. No, but right now it's just in development phase, as we're still developing the game. But that we will be using a replica of some sort for this integration, because like there could be a lot of performance issues that could occur from doing all of these queries on
Right.
the production database. So we want to kind of have a specific database where we can actually yeah, a replica where you can query this sort of data
Makes sense.
without any issues of potentially causing performance issues on the production database.
That's right. No, well, actually, which is cool that you mentioned, because it leads me into the following question, which was how do we, the performance with bottlenecks when we have so many players where we're updating the XP constantly. I mean, when it becomes like larger numbers. I mean, I guess the XPs will update. I mean, every second. And I guess what you're saying is if we put that into its own database, and it will not conflict as much with the other things linked to maybe purchases and accounts or things like that. Is that did I understand that correctly?
Sort of. Basically, when we update things in the database, that will take some performance. But then when you also when you search for data in this database, for example, when you want to, if you want to search for who has the highest score, like the 100 players, then you have to do quite a bit of searching through the database. That causes some performance, or that needs some performance from the database. And that kind of things we want to move away from the production, where production is mainly just towards the game, and then for for other things that we want to do with this data, use it in Discord, we
Right.
use a copy of the data basically. But for the so yeah, as you said, the main bottlenecks here is that we're updating data very frequently in the database and on the game server. So it's basically the game backend and the database that are the bottlenecks here.
Makes sense. All right, very cool. Well, actually, then, which leads into the next category, I guess, that I want to bring into, which was, the interactions between Discord and the game itself. Like, is there, how did we sort of, how do you say this? So I guess there's a sort of triangle, right? Because you have the game, and you have the Discord, but then you also have the database, and like how they interact together in terms of like you just get, well, for example, killing players or NPCs, you gather points in the Discord. Like, are there any
Yeah.
syncing challenges? Like, how does that really work? And are there any like synchronization challenges that we're noticing? I mean, except for the large amounts of data transferring per second. Is there anything else there? How do we set that up? How would that work?
So essentially, the game is connected to the database, and then it's just sending data back and forth there, like updating points and all of that. Then there's basically a service that we have running on that basically connects this database to Discord and make sure that this is updated in Discord. And if you like, for example, write a command in Discord to see the leaderboard, it then fetches this from this service, which then fetches this from the database. And that's kind of how this triangle works.
Right.
Well, sorry, now I forgot your second part of the question.
Well, to be fair, it's also my fault because I kind of like in circles. No, so the second part was like, do you foresee any kind of synchronization problems? I mean, I
Yeah,
suppose like, how are we dealing with that if that were to be an issue?
the synchronization problems that would be in this case would be that since we're not connecting directly to the production database, there will probably be a few seconds delay, so it will not be up to date with 100 seconds or like 100%. It will be a few seconds delay,
Right.
and I think there's no real way to get around that without massively having like extremely big servers to kind of combat that for just being able
Yeah,
to do that. But that, of course, is you require a lot of infrastructure for that.
that's right.
Uh,
But I mean,
which
if it's things for like, even if it's just for gathering points or keeping track of points and things, I mean, I doubt that a few hundred milliseconds more is that big of an issue. I mean, it's not comparable to, for example, responsiveness of the gameplay itself, right?
no, exactly.
Yeah.
Like probably you don't require like instant like second or like millisecond update on what's my point in Discord. Like
For
I
sure.
hope that's not really. I hope you can wait a few seconds, like get a few seconds delay for that without causing too much issues.
Did you hear that, guys? You have to be a little bit patient when it comes to Discord stuff, but it's fine. We're not. It's good. It's all good.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right. And then I guess before we move on to other topics and just optimization backend itself, I was thinking, what kind of optimizations did we implement to keep our backend responsive, like when there's heavy load? I mean, in terms of like, I mean, for example, I remember 3 weeks ago with William, we were struggling with when there's a lot of projectiles. We had to compress all the files and create pools of projectiles to handle performance that way. Can you name other things that we kind of believe are a good way to fight the sort of heavy load issues that we could probably maybe possibly get?
I mean, there's a lot of things you can do when there are some things that you could do. You could, like for example, when you calculate projectiles where they are right now and where they should be rendered, you could move some of that load from the server to the client, kind of do some sort of lazy kind of calculation. You can assume
Yeah.
a lot of stuff with that,
Right.
where you like, for example, projectiles. Um, maybe that's since they are kind of they go one place, so to say. You can maybe that doesn't require that much updating as other things.
Right.
And things like that, where it's like super predictable things, you can kind of get away with not updating it as frequently as other things, and that's one of those optimizations we are looking
Cool.
at.
Oh, that's really cool. All right. Well, and moving a little bit of that responsibility over the client side, could that represent some, I mean, minor, open door for some form of, a user coming in and modifying some files to play around? I mean, the position of the projectile itself is still handled server side, even if we give out a part of that responsibility to the client side, right?
Yeah, exactly. It will just be it will be handled mostly on the server, but you could you can do it in a way that the client handles the kind of calculating part for the middle part of the projectile, but the server always knows
The
where it
truth.
is. Yeah, so to say.
All right, great, cool, awesome. Well, then moving away from the performance stuff. I mean, unless you had something more to talk about in terms of performance, something that that came across your mind.
No, I think we can continue.
Great. So, well, moving away from that, then we were looking into. I mean, obviously there will be some form of payments in the game, right? Whether it's for some cosmetics or things, or you need and things like that. And we were handling what we were thinking about. So first of all, what is the approach that we're using in terms of like implementing payment systems into our game? How can we work around that? Like what kind of what setup have we set up? Oh, that sounds really bad. What setup have we implemented into the game, and which makes the flow, I mean, quite intuitive and easy to handle for us as well on the back end.
Yeah, so we're using a service that's called Stripe. It's quite a it's quite a commonly used service when handling payments. And basically, what you can do is you can kind of create your products within Stripe, which it could be cosmetics and things like that.
Mhm.
We then use that data to kind of fetch what are you able to buy from this from Stripe and into the game. So within the game, we will get the shop basically. Whenever you then on the game, you will add things to your cart basically when you shop. You will then um, when you want to pay, you just click a button, pay, and then you will be redirected to a new page where you can basically pay with like Apple Pay, Google Pay, Visa, Mastercard, PayPal,
Awesome.
and things like that. And then once you have paid everything, it should take a few seconds, and then the things you have bought should be added to your account. So
Oh,
it's quite
So
straightforward.
so is it comparable to, for example, how would you say? Um, well, on Kickstarter, you pay for different tiers. For example, if you're backing a project, you pay for that. So like something in the game corresponds to that on Stripe, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
And so clicking on that just on Stripe means this is what you're buying. You're buying the specific product. So we kind of like you said, we create our products on Stripe, and then we also represent them visually on our end. And
yeah.
then the payments are okay.
Ex-
And so like for the payments and things like that, how are they? So is most of the security stuff handled by Stripe themselves, or I suppose there's some security stuff involved on our end as well, right?
Yeah, basically Stripe handles all of the security from there, and when it comes to like the actual payments and things like that. And then what we do is we prepare the payment or the cart that you want to buy from our end. So when you added all of these things to your cart, you click the button to pay. We basically generate a link, you could say, from Stripe,
Right.
which gives you like a unique identifier for this cart that you want to buy. You send that, or you basically open that. You go through with your payment, and then we know within this we have the ID of your cart, so to say, and then we can always check the status of it. And if the payment has gone through, then we can on our end just uh, add your things to your account that you have bought.
All right.
And
Okay,
so
that makes
that's
sense.
so Stripe handles most of the security when it comes to the payments.
All right, great, cool. Well, that about answers my questions. I mean, obviously, it's an interesting topic. Um, yeah, I was mentioning this a lot for in terms of PR, but it's important to, and this is also one of the reasons why we're making this kind of video, is that we really need to make sure that we're projecting an image, or not even, I mean, just kind of showing that we're very careful with everything we do. We are a startup company, obviously, and we need to make sure we make things right. And I think that's why, even talking about things like payment, some companies might say, "Oh, let's not talk about payment," but I think we should, because this is the kind of things that makes. Well, I guess it kind of shows all of you guys how. A glimpse of how it isn't really easy to handle all this stuff, but we're trying our best at least to make this as legitimate as possible, because that's really important, as it brings us forward, and it also allows us to bring the game forward, and also bring everyone else on the trip forward, and that's really, really important. So I think these are topics that are good to talk about, at least from my end. But so moving away from that, I was thinking about, well, the idea of obviously for Oxide Arena, we're focusing more on implementing the game on WebGL, which is, for you guys that don't know, that is essentially playable on browser. Most browsers, in fact, multiple browsers. Even though I think Firefox is more optimized for WebGL from what I've seen so far. And I guess which leads me into my first question: are there are there any technical trade-offs that we face from getting the game to run really smoothly on WebGL compared to if we were to run it on an application like we will for the actual game later down the line?
Yeah, there are always trade-offs when you're doing it web-based. One of the main things is performance, because firstly, the browser itself takes a bit of performance, and you cannot based on that, you cannot access all of the performance of your computer. So that's one of the main drawbacks that you get from doing it in the web. But then, of course, you get other advantages, because it's very easy to get started playing, because all you need is just a link, and then
Yeah.
basically you're done. You don't need to install anything. You don't need to keep your program updated and things like that. So I mean, that's the biggest trade-off that you do when you're doing it web-based or desktop-based.
Right, and do you think, like, because the idea is obviously once we move towards the larger scale MMO, right, which is what we're going to be building over the next few months, and we'll be, of course, giving really clear stretch goals as to when and where and what point. For those of you that don't know, Oxide Arena is basically the release of the core mechanics of the game itself, in terms of movement, combat, shooting other players, upgrading your ship, testing out different things, gathering the score. I mean, it's a testing ground for us to test all of our systems and make sure everything works out, right? And the idea is we keep working on the project and slowly and build up on Arena until we get to the MMO point, right? But what I'm trying to say is, do you think we'll probably have to move over to application before we even get to the MMO scale, considering that we're building upon the Oxide Arena game itself? And at what point, in terms of, I guess, amount of features and things that we have, do you think we'll most probably have to do that at some point?
I think for Oxide Arena, because it's kind of a scaled down game. I don't think we will need to move away from the web-based part, because we're kind of keeping it a bit scaled down with all of the features and all of that.
Right.
So I don't see really any issue with that. We need to move away from it. But then it's quite easy to move from WebGL to something else, because we have all of the core systems. There are some specific things that are WebGL based in the code that we need to update when we do move on to a desktop application. But it's quite simple to switch between them if there's ever any issues like performance based with the web browser that we definitely need a desktop application for.
Right, because from what I've seen, at least when I've done some coding, it's like the stuff that we do for WebGL is kind of on top of the code itself. So the game that runs on Unity already has, I mean, we can use that code already and use that on an application-based game, from my understanding. Would that be correct?
Yeah, exactly. There's some things that you do with WebGL stuff, but kind of the core mechanics and everything is still in Unity native, so to say.
Right.
It's just a few things that you build on top of it, and those are the kind of the things that you need to change when you move to a desktop application.
Right. And the advantage we'll have then is, I mean, we've optimized so much the game for WebGL that the performance will probably be substantially better as when we do move it to application.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really fun. Hopefully that will, well, hopefully we will aim for that. And I mean, you know, that I see that, you know, the programming team's been working a lot on the performance stuff. So I'm sure that if we can run it real smooth on browser, and currently I think it's pretty smooth, we'll have something really, really nice and smooth for the MMO. And again, it's like kind of setting the base of the project itself, because, well, there's nothing more frustrating, at least for me, when I've played, you know, modern MMOs with just performance lag or requiring, like, you know, a NASA computer. It's like, it's a bit frustrating. And I guess what we're trying to do here is, well, is make this kind of game more accessible to the average person who perhaps just has you know, a standard computer. Yeah, so it'll be fun. I guess we'll have a mix of players, and then I suppose you can scale up and scale down the graphics and all of that. But the goal is to get as many people to be able to play the game as possible, and I think that's really a really fun goal. I think it's quite different to perhaps many games out there, at least for multiplayer, for massively multiplayer. I think for single player it is quite easy. It's a little bit easier in terms of optimizing, but for these scales of multiplayer stuff, it can get really complicated for sure. Yeah, all right, awesome. And then I guess sort of related, we're talking about deploying the game onto the server itself, because I know from my experience when I'm working on the game locally, we run a backend boot which hosts the game directly on, you know, on our on well, here, right, locally, right? And you know, obviously, we know we're talking about this with William. Deploying the production build takes about 58 minutes, which is, you know, long. But
Yeah.
you know, is there any like deployment strategy? Like, did we use any? Well, I guess not. No, did we use any containers or not installs? Because I don't think we use that. Or do we? No, not even that either. I guess the main focus was compressing the arts pieces, because those are technically the stuff that are the more demanding for web-based games, at least from my understanding so far.
Yeah, exactly. All of the art, everything visual is the most demanding for the clients. So that's very important to make sure that to get them as small as possible, because that will also make them much faster to render on the client.
That's right. Because as William likes to say, code is fast as long as you write it
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. Exactly.
Cool. Awesome. And then I guess I was talking about, we mentioned earlier the idea of creating, I mean, using Oxide as a starting platform to make a multiplayer system that is reusable. How modular is our multiplayer systems? Like, how, if we wanted to build a spin-off game, like, how complicated would it be to reuse all of this?
We have all of the core systems. We have a kind of a good baseline code for all of this. We would of course need to kind of based on the game, we would like create kind of a new version of it, but we have kind of all of the setup of the code how we want it. It's quite easy to just copy code over, to just do some small changes of it, and then you're up and running with your new modified version of it. So it's quite modular. We have some sort of microservice architecture that we are trying to follow, which makes it you can quite easily switch in and out kind of services. We can seamlessly, if we want to do upgrades, we want to kind of redesign some sort of component. Let's say we want to redesign our how we have built our or Discord interface, since that's running as its own service. If we want to kind of, that's reusable for like any other game, that kind of integration. It's just we need to do some sort of small changes to it, and then we're good to go.
Awesome. So I guess, can we say that globally, future proofing and reusability was like one of the core concepts of the development of this project?
Yeah, definitely. It's one of the most important things, so that we can very easily get, if just for our sake, with going forward with Oxide from Oxide Arena. That's super important that we can use Oxide Arena as a baseline to then further develop Oxide to the game we want it to be.
Right. Awesome. Then I'm With all that being said, can you like, are we? If we were to, I mean, I know this is a difficult question because there's been a lot of issues, but if we were, I don't like the idea of making a top three most difficult things, but like, if you were to name something right off the bat that was a particular headache for you guys to set up, what would that be?
I think kind of the first production build of the first deployment of Oxide Arena. It was a bit tricky. It took a bit of trial to get it working, but we eventually did. So that was it was mostly a learning experience because once we knew how to do it, it was quite straightforward.
Right.
So now we can do it quite quickly setting up. So
That's great.
that's one thing we definitely. Well, it was a challenge, but now that we have done it, it's quite easy.
Makes sense. But and that would be, I guess, pretty applicable for most things when it comes to programming and developing. I'd say, generally speaking, right? So.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's like a few services that we have set up that have been like, for me, it has been since I'm working with this in my day job. It's been very easy for me to do.
Yeah.
But for some other people, it's a bit of a struggle sometimes because they are not used to have not done it like I have done like every day for a few years basically.
Makes sense. Yeah.
But so that's kind of all of our development teams they have different experiences, and some people have done some things that are more applicable to this area right now, and some people have done other things that are applicable to some other areas. So different people have had different challenges in
Makes
this
sense.
project.
Makes sense. And if you were to, we don't have to go too much in detail about that, but if you were to compare like daytime job to this job, like, are there, are there any similarities or big differences, or is something more challenging than the other?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot more freedom in this kind of
Setup.
development. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's both more fun, but it's also a bit more challenging because usually for my normal day-to-day job, I get quite clear requirements from the software that I'm building. But here we kind of have to guess, like
Of course.
we have to guess how to actually build it the best way, and that's sometimes it's fun, but it's also a bit challenging because it's very hard to get feedback quite quickly. So
Yeah,
there's a
that's
lot of
true.
guesswork in that sense. So that's I would say it's the biggest difference.
For sure. And so looking back on all of this, I'm going to be Captain Hindsight, but is there anything like in terms of just infrastructure? Is there or programming? I mean, more on the technical side. Is there anything you're thinking, oh, I should have done this differently, or would you have done the exact same thing, at least in that same order?
um,
It's not always an easy question. That one is.
no, I don't think I would have done things that differently. I think we had quite a good baseline. We have There's a few minor changes we have done, but I think that we've mostly got it how we wanted it. But of course, we haven't released the game yet. There's still, potential things that we need to optimize and things like that. So
Yep,
I would say it's also a bit too early maybe to say if it's,
for sure, for sure.
uh,
No, absolutely. Well, I could talk about this one feature that we're not going to be implementing immediately because it requires a lot of work. I think we've done most of it, right, but it's not really functional, and that is the rotating map. That's the fact that planets and things move around on a real time basis. I mean, I think that's been. I mean, that's no, I don't think I know. That's been worked on quite a lot, and I think most of it is done, but it requires some more polishing and things like that. In terms of performance, that's pretty big, or is it pretty big? How are we sort of handling all that? Is that a
yeah, I mean, it causes some more performance, definitely moving the map around. Because essentially you're moving all of the players as well. Like if you kind of have a set map, you can, and a player presses forward, you have to, you just have to calculate it kind of the base speed and then kind of a standard distance for how long they hold it, and then that's how far they travel.
Right.
with the rotating map, you have to always also calculate based on where the map is, and so that also is some performance concerns that could occur. But we haven't really done, implemented it fully, so we don't
No,
really
yeah,
know how much it will affect performance.
for sure. And in terms of do we? Well, so we don't really know, but we could speculate. Do we still think that's something we'll be able to run on the GL, on the WebGL, so on the browser version of the game, or do you think that's probably something we'll run further down the line?
I think it should probably be possible. I think the main issue is kind of how much calculations the server can do uh, per second basically,
Yeah,
and then like how many servers do we need? Like, will this become too much of a bottleneck that will cause us to have like a sevenfold increase of servers to be able to run this? Then maybe we will not have this feature because it will be, it's quite expensive to run 7 times more servers.
for sure. No, absolutely, absolutely. Well, it definitely is a subject we'll have to look at, but hopefully it works out. It'd be fun to be able to implement that. And I
Yeah.
think eventually, at some point in time, whether it's in 3 years from now or I'd like to believe that we'll do it, but we're not going to make empty promises, so for sure. But it is an interesting topic and we can bring up some other time.
Yeah.
Great. Well, that was all I had on the game side. Now I'm going to throw a little curveball at you, Isaac. I don't know if you'll like this a lot, but so not to dig too much into what you do, but you also play. Well, William is one of the what do you say? The thing he likes to say the most is you need to find occupations on the side to balance like the stress levels of working 2 jobs. And for William, it's going to the gym, and for me, it's like going on stage and playing music. I know that you play football, and it's
Yeah.
football season right now in the summer. How is that working out in terms of balancing your time schedule for this? Is it a breather
I
for
mean,
you, or is it?
I think it's quite fine actually, because our football practices are quite early in the evening. So I'm usually back home when after training, and then I have some time for when everyone else is working on this or when we have meetings and all of that. So it's quite easy for me to juggle, I would say. Actually, it does sometimes, it causes some conflicts, but it's quite easy to juggle. It's not like super professional in that way that you have to like if you go up a bit in skill level, people they play football like 5 or 6 times a week, like
Yeah,
2-hour sessions, and then you have like a lot of sessions upon that where you do like rehab work, you do
for
some
sure.
gym work and all of that where in the team, and that's that takes up a lot of time. But this
Yeah,
is
I can
it's
imagine.
yeah, but this is more of an amateur level, so it's fine to miss
Yeah,
some
of course.
practices now and then. It's like
Of
no
course, of
big deal.
course. I hope your coach isn't watching this. He probably doesn't like that you say this, but
No, they are not
it's fine.
that into games, that team.
It's
They
fine.
are,
We can blur your face for this part.
yeah.
All right, cool. Well, listen, Isaac, it's been a pleasure. I think we've pretty decently length here for the first episode. I think it's been really fun, and I think you've been really helpful and clear and to talk about those things. I think it's interesting. I'm not sure everybody is that interested in technicalities, but I'm sure there's a bunch of you out there that are, and we love talking about this stuff. And we'll be doing episodes like this for tech side, for the design side, for music side as well. So you'll get more information like this. I hope the format is something that you guys are cool with. Is this is something that you like? And obviously we'll be trimming and putting some stuff into the Instagram, but at least this episode will be released natively. I mean, natively. Well, you call it no editing, I suppose.
Yeah.
So natively, right, as it is on YouTube, and we're not gonna be touching it. I'll probably be adding a little bit of music or something, or other than that, I think it's nice to keep it as standard as possible, to keep the natural feeling of just an exchange. So, but thank you very much, Isak. It's been really cool. It's been really
Yeah,
fun.
it's been
So
really fun.
awesome.
Thank you.
Well, looking forward to this. Probably have another one of those at some point in time, and yeah. Until then, we'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you.
Thank you.